Hello, we are still here. It is still international break, and I've still got at least a couple of clubs to speak to. So why not speak to the legend? BenHD, I haven't spoken to you for a whole 4 hours or something. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, it's all good, thank you. Seeing you all the time now, but all the best for your company.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Look, we spoke about this morning on Championship 365. We're going to talk Preston and whatnot, but obviously, if Ben goes into detail on Championship 365 about the death of Trevor Hemmings, but if you can just give us a quick, for the YouTube audience, a quick little minute of your thoughts on the passing of Hemmings and his legacy to the club.
Yeah, obviously it came as a real shock when it came out on social media, and it has been nice to see the sort of outpouring of emotions from North End fans and how we in the club have sort of come together after the news and things like that. But yeah, as a quick summary, obviously Hemmings came in as the outright owner around 2010, and ultimately when the club was in a bit of a difficult situation. And like I sort of said on that show, the biggest sort of compliment that I can pay to Hemmings and his sort of time at Preston is the fact that we as North End fans have been pretty comfortable in saying that we don't have to worry about the future of our football club and anything like that. And, you know, in the modern day, that can at times seem like a bit of a luxury with how we see things going, both in the Championship and the sort of rest of the EFL. So, yeah, looking forward to that game against Darby, which we got coming up next, which I think will be a bit of a sort of celebration of all that, really.
Yeah, brilliant stuff, Ben. And that is Trevor Hemmings, the Preston owner who died just a couple of days ago. So we are in season so far territory, and I always kind of open by giving my sort of thought and then seeing if it lines up with somebody who watches a lot more closely than I do, frankly. But Preston they're on my worry list, Ben. I have to say that will come as no surprise to you at the start of the season. And I don't know if it's a bit of a easy sort of conclusion when the second in command or one of the coach comes in and then does well and gets the job. It often doesn't end well, and I kind of use that as my starting position. That may be fair, that may be unfair. We'll find out in the fullness of time how that works out. It's only 2 wins for McAvoy, but what I will say is it's one of those ones we were talking about Gary Rowett earlier, you and I, where you have a whole run of draws and then you stick a win on the end and that looks good. You have a whole run of draws and then you stick a defeat on the end and it looks bad. But am I right in saying that he's working towards a system now and a first 11, and perhaps there's optimism to move up from 18th? What's your feeling on the first just shy of a quarter of a season then?
Yeah, you've put it well there, really, with that sort of consecutive run of draws and how whatever the result is after that sort of then sets the tone for the rest of the season. I do feel like, and it was a bit of a bonkers game in the end, that one we lost against QPR, but had we come out of that game with 3 points, it probably would be a bit of a different feeling around the club at the moment, because, I mean, things have been a little bit topsy-turvy, really, obviously. It really was a poor start to the season with those opening 3 matches. We were awful on the first day against Hull. We followed it up with a defeat against Reading and another one after that against Huddersfield as well. And then from then on, I think Frankie's just sort of made that choice to want to look to solidify us a little bit. We got those 2 wins. And obviously after that, we had that consecutive run of draws. And at the moment, it does sort of feel like we're sort of in Championship limbo a little bit. I think we're one of like 7 or 8 Championship clubs who have all got like 11 or 12 points at the moment. So we're sort of in that category of the table where I think this next round of fixtures after this international break will really sort of paint a picture for where we actually are at the moment. Because, should we pick up a couple of results, we'll absolutely fly up the league. Should things get a little bit sticky and we could find ourselves in that relegation battle. So, yeah, it does feel like lots of fine margins at Preston at the moment. And, yeah, these next few matches, I think, will be quite decisive for our season.
It's totally set up for fine margins, isn't it, in that table over there? And thick and fast, as we were discussing this morning as well. So the perception of Preston, particularly under Alex Neil and in that first year, was that they were a kind of medium-sized Championship club, but they had good players. Do you know what I mean? You could always look at a Robinson or a Bugle, Johnson, Brown, Pearson, who was the centre back who went? Ben Davies.
Ben Davies, yeah.
How does that squad? I'm going to ask you about a standout player in a minute, but how do you think your squad sort of stands up now in comparison to that first Alex Neil season and finishing just outside the playoffs?
Yeah, I think if you were to put this squad right now up with that squad that I think finished like 1 point off the top 6 in the end, then I do think we are a way off from that at the moment. And I think that what the club was sort of putting out the message on social media and what Frankie's been saying a lot in the media is this is a bit of a transitional season, to be honest with you. Obviously, in January, when we had all those departures, we brought in a load of loan players, and even in the summer transfer window, there was quite a bit of business done in terms of those ins and outs at the moment. And it does feel like the start of this new team at the moment, and it's going to be a bit of a project to see where they sort of are in the next 2 or 3 years, because it very much feels like that Alex Neil side came towards the end of its cycle, and this one at the moment is sort of at the start of it. So sort of compare how good these players will be compared to those last ones. Hard to tell at the moment when we sort of saw all the highs that Alex Neil delivered in those first couple of seasons.
It was a good batch, wasn't it? A good sort of core of a squad that was. So there you go. That leads on perfectly then. Who are you enjoying watching so far this season? Is there a standout player and that player that you can then sort of build, the next iteration of Preston around? Who do you think?
Yeah, to be honest, there's been a few players who have stood out to me so far. One that I quickly touch on would be Emile Rees, who I think had a bit of a tough time last season. When we first signed him last season under Alex Neil, I was so excited about him. He really hit the ground running. He got a goal, couple of assists, won some penalties, was really good at running in behind. And we sort of joke about it at Preston, but we've had a consecutive run of sort of like flops at striker since we sold Jordan Hugill.
Lucas Nemecha.
Yeah, Nemecha was all right, to be fair, but we've had a run of just some that haven't worked out. But Rees is the first one that I'd bank my money on to say we will sell for a profit in a few years' time. And he has hit the ground running so far this season. But the one player that I myself would particularly pick out, who I've been really impressed so far, would be Josh Earl. And you might know a little bit about him.
Yeah, we had him on loan at Ipswich,
Yeah, well, he was a player who came through originally under Alex Neil, and he had one really good season at championship level. And then it was that sort of scenario where the season after, we all expected him to sort of build on that season, and it didn't quite happen for him. He made a few mistakes at the back for whatever reason from then on, couldn't work his way back into the team, and was sort of sent out on loan to a few different clubs, obviously Ipswich being one of them. But with Josh Earl, there's always been this sort of thought about, we don't know where his best position is, because when he first came through under Alex Neil, we were playing him as a sort of traditional fullback. In the youth academy setup, he was a bit of a winger, and in some of the loan spells out, he's been playing his football at centre half. So we were all sort of
He's big though, isn't he?
He is. Yeah, he is. So we were all sort of thinking, where do we best fit him in? And I think that he's probably been the biggest sort of benefactor of Frankie moving to a sort of 5 at the back system this time around, because I think that wing back role suits him down to the ground. I think that he's got that level of sort of athleticism to allow him to get up and down the pitch, but he's also got that extra added centre half behind him in Andrew Hughes, who I think has done very well in that left-sided position, that just gives him that bit more sort of reassurance at the back. It means that there isn't that sort of 1v1 pressure of a winger standing him up or anything like that. And, I always say, I joke about it a little bit, but I think that if we could sort of combine Andy Hughes' defensive attributes with Josh Earl's attacking attributes, we probably have the perfect... have the perfect championship fullback there. But yeah, this season, I think I've been really impressed with Josh Earl. He's still only 22, so at a young age as well. And I think that if he continues on this path for this year, then I could definitely see him being one of those sort of like saleable assets in a few years' time.
Yeah, great answer. And what does my dad's cousin always used to say? You never see a lawyer riding a bicycle. I would say you'll never see an athletic, left-footed young player in the championship riding a bike. Do you know what I mean? Someone will find a use. Has there been a standout performance, Ben? I'm just looking at the wins, and it's a 1-0 against the Posh at home, and Swansea, did you get them at a good time? And then there's a lot of draws in there. Has there been a standout performance? Is it even a victory?
Yeah, it would have to be one of those two wins. I'd probably go for the Swansea one because that felt like a bit of a relief at the time. Obviously, the Peterborough win was big because it was our first win of the season. It was coming off the back of that Huddersfield game. We did have a lot of chances in that game, but we just couldn't quite put them to bed in that one.
Didn't you lose and they didn't have a shot basically because it was an own goal? Is that right?
Yeah, the Huddersfield one. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. It wasn't great. And then obviously we came into the Peterborough one, had a bucket of chances in that one as well. But thankfully, we just managed to get that one over the line. But yeah, we did, in terms of the best performance of the season, I probably would say that Swansea one. We did definitely catch them at a good time because they looked a little bit all over the place at the back and things like that. But to come back from behind and get those 3 goals, yeah, I'd certainly go with that one. And it's been, in some of the draws we've had so far, it has been fine margins, and there have definitely been matches where we've been lucky to come away with points. Daniel Iverson, probably another standout performer in terms of some of those draws who's kept us in it. But with some of the other ones, games against Bristol City and Birmingham especially, I think those were the sort of ones that we'll have been looking back on and thinking, those are the ones in a sort of consecutive run of draws that you need to sort of be winning if you do want to move up the table with the sort of chances we had in those games.
Without digging anybody out in particularly, who do you think that McAvoy can get more from, and that you're going to see more from as the season goes on? Excuse me.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, really, and I'd probably say Alan Brown. I think so far, obviously, he was one of those people who was like a central part of that Alex Neil side,
And
but
so versatile as well, almost to his own detriment. Yeah.
And that's just the point that I was going to make there, because I think that he struggled with injuries so far this season. So he has been sort of in and out of the side and things like that. But now that he's got himself back to that situation where he is fully fit, I'm not quite sure where he best fits in at the moment. I think that if you look at our current setup, Daniel Johnson's playing really well in that number 10 role at the moment. I think he's perfectly suited to that. In terms of the sort of double pivot that we've got in midfield, Ledson and Whiteman, I think, are building up a really good relationship. And we've also then got Ali McCann to come into that position as well, who he himself has looked really good and energetic off the bench so far this season. So if I'm looking for anywhere for Brown to sort of fit him in at the moment, it's probably like as that right wing back. But even then, we've got Seth Vandenberg, who's been really good this season, and we've also got Matthew Olasunde to come back from injury, who we sort of bought for the sort of specialist in that position. So yeah, I don't know what it's going to take for Brown to get back into this side at the moment, because I mean, listen, we all as North End fans know what he's capable of. He's the club captain, and still at such a young age and things like that. But with everyone sort of playing their best football at this particular time, and with no injuries in those sort of departments, it's difficult to see where he gets a place sort of starting week in, week out at the moment, which, I would have thought was a crazy thing to say if I had said that, 2 or 3 years ago.
It does feel like a crazy thing to think now, though, still, doesn't it? Because I always thought he was a decent goal scorer as well. We always arrive and pretty, decent enough finisher as well. And right wing back, we used to end up with actual fullback as well. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, keep an eye on that one. So 18th with 11 gone. We're playing higher or lower by Christmas, and you are right. There are 7 teams within 1 point of each other in there, and I think the fixtures are all right coming up to Christmas, aren't they? So, we got a nice higher coming up from you then, Ben?
Well, yeah, you know me, I am sort of forever the optimist with this sort of thing. So, yeah, I would say higher with considering the sort of fixtures that we have got coming up. But, yeah, like I was mentioning before, I do think that this is quite a big moment in Frankie's career with Preston, really, to push us onwards and ensure that we're not sort of getting sucked into anything. So, yeah, a few wins between now and Christmas certainly wouldn't go amiss.
It's just a no-win for these guys that step up from coach, isn't it? Because, if he doesn't get the wins, it's, get a proper manager in. And if he does get the wins, it's, okay, he's doing all right. We'll keep going and then wait till he does lose a few games. Hide into nothing, don't they? So can you give me a classic YouTuber? I need a grade. For the start to the season. So it's one of those ones, I guess, where perhaps some progress that you would know about that doesn't necessarily exhibit itself on the league table might push you a little bit higher than an outsider might think. What's your letter grade, Ben?
I think overall for Preston at the moment, I'd probably go around a C. I think that would be fair enough. For where we currently find ourselves in the table, like I was mentioning before, we are sort of still in limbo at the moment in terms of we don't know whether we'll be pushing up further up or getting dragged into something a little bit further behind. But I think that at the start of the season, I had us predicted to be in and around this portion of the table. I think I had us 17th or 16th or something like that. So yeah, for us to be at this stage at the moment isn't too much of a surprise. So I'd probably go around the C because there is some progress that is being made, but yeah, there's still that underlying feeling that we could get dragged into something.
Amazing stuff. Ben, can you do the plugs? Championship 365, BenHD channel. When we work together on Football 365 as well now, loads of places you can find Ben. Twitter as well. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so absolutely everywhere you can find me at the moment. Obviously, me and Ben doing the Championship 365 show, loads of fun, doing all that stuff over there. And then on YouTube, just BenHD and doing, a lot of the similar stuff, sort of predictions, week-to-week stuff, previews and things like that. And yeah, all about the Championship, which is always good fun.
Brilliant stuff. Best league in the world, and I'm missed it. Ben, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll keep an eye on McAvoy and North End and Brown and Reece. Some really good shouts in there for those of us less educated than you about, which is most of us, frankly, about Preston. Keep up the good work, my friend.
Top stuff.